Okay, we're live. It's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. Dr. Phil Ovadia is right over here in Chicago, right, Phil?
Currently outside of Chicago, yes.
All right.
On the
And
road
I'm,
again.
of course, I'm the comic relief, Jack Heald, and we are here today with Harrison Gray, about whom I know nearly nothing. Phil, tell us why you invited this guy, and then let's find out who the heck he is and why he's here. I'm just going to sit back and listen.
Sure thing. Looking forward to another great discussion. I think continuing the theme that we've been exploring over the past few episodes, Harrison is just another real interesting guy that came across on Twitter and on the internet, and he's got a great story to tell, and I think a great perspective on, all of the things that we talk about on this show. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Harrison and let him sort of introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his background and how he came to be so interested in the importance of the foods that we are eating.
Absolutely. And thank you both for having me on. Appreciate you guys giving me the platform to speak on these important topics because, quite frankly, a year ago, I was sitting at a 9-to-5 job working an investment management private equity job and decided to make a change into my true passions, which is nutrition and health, and didn't really know how to make that change without having to go back to school. So being on this podcast is sort of a great indictment of the power of Twitter and just who you can connect with. And, Phil, we've sort of gotten in touch through Slim, but it's just been great to be able to reach out to all the different really credentialed medical doctors and be able to learn from you all and be able to support your guys' mission. So excited to be here. I guess I'll start telling my story back from the days when I was a college baseball player, and nutrition has always been an important part of my story. I was always trying to find the right things to tweak to be better at what I was doing. And then, fast forward through college, I was sitting at a desk all day, 9 to 5, working long hours, munching on the Doritos and Oreos in between lunch and realizing that I was straying further away from my past, which was really just a overly active and healthy lifestyle. And that was, two parts, nutrition and also, activity levels changing. So I noticed, just kind of in my day-to-day, things were changing in my health that, were obvious to me because I had spent enough time focusing on my nutrition previously to understand that feeling and relationship with my body. So I knew pretty quickly that things were starting to change for the worse. My playing weight was around 215, 220, and I'd gotten up to like 235, 240 within the first 5 years of my working career. So I was, kind of always fluctuating against, that resistance of trying to be in shape and healthy, but also trying to manage the lifestyle, which I think a lot of people can relate with. And so I had done the paleo diet in college when I was playing baseball and really felt the benefits of it. But it wasn't until when COVID hit that I struck on the keto diet, which for me, so that was about 2 years ago this time. And for me, that moment in time was valuable for me. I was able to really get focused on my health. I went from 235 to down to 210, 215, best shape I've ever been in. And it was really just this focused period of 2 to 3 months of really diving into the keto diet where, I had given up drinking during that period, which was part of my social life and part of my lifestyle. And then really just cooked 100% of my meals. So I was in control of everything that I was eating. And the transformation I saw was all nutrition related. I wasn't doing anything exceptional in terms of activity. I was walking on an excessive amount, but I was walking, probably 2 hours a day as my exercise. And that was basically it. And then I was just focusing on the nutrition, and I saw the weight that I was frustrated with and the stress that I was feeling with my day-to-day job just erode away. And it was that change that made me realize that, one, as a person who's health conscious and has been health conscious my whole life and struggled with it for 5 years, I can't imagine what other people who aren't equipped with the knowledge are dealing with. And so, I think I was really introduced to these ideas from people like Sean Baker, and I think Paul Saladino as well was another one who I just came across them, their social media accounts, Twitter and Instagram. And it really struck with me because I knew what they were speaking to. I'd done something similar before, and it just sparked something for me to go try it. And as soon as I saw success, I was back down the rabbit hole of really wanting to make nutrition and in the healthy living a bigger part of my life. And, fast forward a year from when COVID started, I started to realize that, the job I was working in wasn't giving me that sort of alignment in my life that I wanted. And so quickly realized that I wanted to move in a direction where I could start working in the nutrition and health space. So moved down to Austin, Texas, with my buddy Salazzo, or Brett, outside of our Twitter names. And we ran an Ironman together in October down in Waco, Texas. Really? And we were living together. And so we had spent a month of our life living together, training for the last month for the Ironman, really getting it dialed in, trying to really put all of our energy and focus into that. And his story is amazing. So he cured his ulcerative colitis through a carnivore diet, which I think you guys are going to have him on maybe later in the week. So I'll save his story for then. But it was very like-minded thinking around nutrition and thinking about ways that we could share his story, which I think is incredibly valuable for a lot of people who are dealing with autoimmune issues, and my story, which is pretty relatable for a lot of people who are maybe not in that, necessity-based need to make a change with my diet, but I really feel like I should. And so between our two stories, my original passion getting down to Austin was to start getting into regenerative agriculture and start building out a business around regenerative agriculture, because I saw the food system as the biggest issue in the health system. And so I wanted to throw myself into...
I want to stop. I just want to bookmark that.
Absolutely.
The food system is the biggest issue in the health system. I just want to highlight that. Phil, that's the quote. That's at least one of the quotes you want. Sorry, I didn't mean to. But
no, absolutely.
When I hear something awesome, I want to make a note of it. That was awesome. Okay, carry on.
Sweet. So, and I was working my job and on the side doing a lot of research on this regenerative agriculture movement, which I see the spark starting to be flared, and I think that a lot of people are waking up to it. But it's this idea that our nutrition starts in a place that's much different than what most people think. And I think there's been this detachment from food in a lot of ways. And our food system really does start in the soil and then how these animals and plants are raised. So one of the things that I started writing about was I started writing for Slim. And I was doing that as a way to educate myself on regenerative agriculture. And as a parallel to that, I'm into the Bitcoin community and really the idea of sovereign money. So the parallels there for me...
I got all kinds of questions now. Keep going.
I will. So the parallels there for me are really strike a few different similar chords. But
so can I jump in? Because
absolutely. Sorry, going on a rant, but please.
Well, one of the dangers of podcasting is we sometimes forget that we don't dialogue the way we would if it was just the three of us sitting around the campfire shooting the shit and drinking some good whiskey. By the way, Phil, I just want to point out that I'm still working on that bourbon you brought me, and I'm loving it. So I want to hear about this connection that you guys see with Bitcoin, regenerative farming, the whole food movement, maybe it's deeper than I recognize, or maybe it's shallower. I somehow I failed to get that out of Slim. I may have just not asked the question well. But tell me about the connections and why it all matters.
So
And
I
by the way,
think,
Bitcoin's up huge today.
yeah, it's been moving recently. I've been curious to see how it's going to react to all the things that are happening with commodity prices and uh, potential, geopolitical strains with war. So my thing with Bitcoin has been, I think it's a way to hold people who hold political office accountable, because it's money that's independent from any sort of institutionalized or sovereign system. And so I think food, in a similar way, it it should have a relationship to this idea of being able to be grown for yourself, and you should have dependent, or you can choose to be completely dependent on yourself, or in other words, independent, if you want to. So I think that the parallels are kind of along this independence movement where
Mm,
you don't want to be reliant on a system for your food. You don't want to be reliant on a government to tell you, like, what's going to be happening with the printing of your money, the supply of your money. And so I think a lot of people during COVID realized that the government was spending and printing money at a rate that, and for better or worse, I'm sure that they avoided a lot of moral hazards by printing that money. But at the same time, I think it's a reflection of how we view currency, which is that it's endless, and that it's something that can just be printed into existence just out of thin air. And I think that's a principle that goes against a lot of these natural laws. I think there are limits to how much you can print and without killing the currency. And so I think Bitcoin is specifically interesting because it's created scarcity in a digital sense. So, the more people that adopt into Bitcoin, the more, the network effect starts to take hold. And uh, that really is because the supply is capped, and the demand there should continue to grow if people continue to believe in the fact that sovereign money is important, and people should be able to hold something like gold and something that's outside of the main systems as a way to store their wealth, without it being, quite frankly, messed with via inflation or other
right.
means. So,
Subject to somebody's politics.
yeah, and I'm somewhat sensitive to the fact that I don't think that anarchy is what Bitcoin's going for, and I don't think that's what the whole uh, grow your own food or know your food system is going for. But I think it's just an accountability uh, test. And so if you don't hold the people who set the rules accountable, what are they going to do? They're going to abuse the power that they're given. And I think that we're kind of seeing that today. Um, you know, my past experience is obviously interesting, working in finance and now moving into nutrition. So that's kind of the bridge for me between like Bitcoin and the food system is, I wasn't specifically working in cryptocurrency or anything beforehand, but I was obviously always interested in it. And it's this new technology that I think offers a lot. And I think that having worked with Slim and writing under him and seeing the parallels between how Bitcoiners think and how people who want to really take control of the potentially fragile food system. I mean, when you start thinking about some of the concentration risk in the food system and some of the bigger issues where conventional agriculture is massively subsidized by the government, which I think has created a system where food is cheap but not rich in nutrients. So you're seeing the output of that. If it's a system,
Right.
the output of the system is producing food that's not giving people what they need in order to thrive and be, living vitalious. Is that a word?
Vitaliously. I like that.
It is now.
Live
We'll give you that
vitaliously.
one. So it's interesting, one of the kind of themes I'm hearing as you're talking is this recognizing, that you had a problem with your health, recognizing some of these problems around you, around the food system that, most people don't even realize are problems. And, as you were telling your story, I was kind of thinking that, a lot of people in your situation wouldn't have even viewed themselves as unhealthy, wouldn't have even, connected that they had a problem with their health and they had to start changing something, in terms of what they were eating or what they were doing. Um, and I'm just interested to hear, what was it that really kind of pushed you to pursue that, as opposed to just accepting, like so many of us around do, that, oh, I'm just getting a little older and I'm getting a little bit more overweight, and I'm just more tired and more stressed because of the work I'm doing, and most people just leave it at that and accept it as inevitable until it becomes a big problem, and and then they end up on my operating table, so to speak. But
Yeah.
you recognized it earlier and chose to do something about it.
Yeah, I think I actually think about this a lot because it was kind of a few factors, and COVID, the disruption of COVID, definitely being one of them. Uh, I think the relative change in my health is probably similar to people who spiral, go further down the unhealthy pathway. I think I was probably in high school. I would have considered myself one of the high school and college, like one of the most healthy people I was surrounding myself with. So I think the relative change for me was surprising. So I just kind of, similar to people who, let themselves go. I think I had just been in tune with my nutrition before that to a degree that I really felt it a lot, even though it hadn't gotten out of control to a point where I would have ended up on your operating table.
Well,
But
not immediately.
right, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, if look, these
Oh,
things.
I was just thinking about the fact that here you are 5 years out of college, you've already put on 30 pounds.
Yeah,
I mean, that is 15% additional weight. That's
yeah,
3% a year, you
and
know, and the heavier you get, the easier it becomes to add more fat. So
yeah,
10 years down the road without a change, you're 60 pounds overweight or maybe more.
exactly,
15 years down the road, you're grossly obese.
totally,
That's the trajectory. And so the
totally.
fact that you recognized that, even though I'm sure visually you probably weren't, nobody went, oh my God, Harrison's a fatty. That's the
Except my
path
best
you were
friends.
on, except your best friends who are going to bust you regardless of what you look like. So I commend you. But I don't want to minimize the the magnitude of the change that you had to make, or the magnitude of the destination that you were heading for without that change. You were destined to end up on the operating table. It's
Yeah,
that simple.
yeah, it's interesting too because I'm a bigger guy to begin with. 6'4", have always been able to carry some muscle mass too. So being able to hide the weight is probably part of the issue as well, right? Like people wouldn't have noticed if I put on that much. I couldn't imagine people really could have noticed. They would have said, yeah, he didn't look like what he used to, but I was like 240 and feeling the worst that I've ever felt, and that wasn't sitting well with me. And the main reason was like my clothes that I used to wear just were uncomfortable. Like, and I, that to me is like, all right, I need to. I'm the type of person that will just kind of drop it all and make the change quickly. And as soon as COVID hit, I think personally, my environment plays a massive role in how quickly I make changes, and I'm sure that's similar for a lot of people.
Talk about that. Expand
Yeah.
on that idea. How did your environment make a difference?
Well, I think environment comes in a few forms, but who you're surrounding yourself with plays into that, but also your physical environment. So, I was working the 9 to 5 job, staying indoors most days, not getting nearly as much sun exposure as I needed to, not being as active as I needed to, and living in a small apartment. So the confines of my environment were creating this, sort of caged feeling, right? And I think that plays into your health when you're not getting outside enough, when you're not being, moderately active during the day. It takes a toll on you. I think it takes more of a toll on you than actually going out and getting an hour-long workout in. So I think that I was just physically putting myself in these spaces and kind of surrounding myself with people who didn't really have the same lifestyle goals as I did, and that sort of just started to become a part of what I was doing. And so I think
Oh,
that
so you're talking about environment really had a negative environment had a negative effect on you.
I think so. Yeah. And then I think that on the other side of that, the change was kind of sparked by the relative isolation in COVID, which I think affected certain people certain ways. I was able to totally lock in on the things I wanted to change. I cooked 100% of my meals. I was walking 2 hours a day and focusing on the things that I wanted to change. And quickly, that spark to make the change was lit. And I think it was really, that feeling that, going back to Phil's original question, that I was just starting to feel uncomfortable with how my body was fitting into the clothes I was wearing, and I wasn't able to, be as active as I used to be without sort of feeling a little bit slow and lethargic. And I'm the type of person who wants to live an active and healthy life until I'm well into my 70s. Grew up skiing a bunch, and I want to be able to. My motto is like, I want to die skiing, basically. So
Die skiing.
yeah.
There's easy ways to do that. I can help.
Yeah, I think into my 80s.
So do a compare and contrast. I used to eat these things,
Yeah,
and then I changed to eating those things. I'm actually after two different ideas. One is, how'd you used to eat? How do you eat now? And how long did it take to drop that? I'm guessing 25 or 30 pounds. Start
yeah,
with how long did it take to drop it once you made the change?
yeah, for sure. So I would say, you want me to start with how long it took me to
Yeah,
drop
how
it?
long did it take to drop it once you made the change?
It took 6 weeks for me to drop it.
Good
And
Lord.
I was incredibly just disciplined with a keto diet. From March, it was like 6 to 8 weeks. It was March to April.
Wow, that's really fast.
March,
Okay,
yeah, beginning of March to end of April.
so explain the food changes that you made that allowed that pretty significant weight loss to occur in such a short period of time.
Yeah, so I think beforehand I was really just so I would
Details, man, details. Come
this
on.
is in the office, Harrison, going into the office, eating a lunch that was usually a sub or a sandwich, bag of chips, and then honestly grazing was the issue for me. So I would, the work life office would provide all these snacks throughout the day, and it was usually just garbage, right? So they had the chips out, the cookies out. I've never been a soda person, but the chips and cookies definitely got to me. So I would, walk into the kitchen, grab a quick bag of chips, go back to my desk, sit, and over the course of a few years, that adds up. And that was sort of the thing. Was I was not cooking my own meals. I wasn't bringing my own food into the office. I was always eating out, and there were only so many options. And when you're stressed out, when you're stressed out and you don't have a plan, you're not prepared to make the right decision. And so that was me.
That's
I
big.
was
When you're stressed out and you don't have a plan, you're not prepared to how'd you say that? Make
the right decision.
make the right decision. You're
Yeah.
stressed out and you don't have a plan. You're not prepared to make the right decision. That's good. I
Well, I
like
think
that.
the plan lets you think about the decision you're going to make before you make it, so you feel a little bit more obligated to stick with it. And for me, I was in the moment trying to, make decisions on my health that, yeah, you're sitting there looking at a menu, you don't see all the different nutritional facts, and you're not thinking about it, and you just order, whatever your taste buds are feeling that day. And I think that is probably a fault of many. And so for me, that was how I was eating beforehand. And then after, so I was, in my apartment during COVID, during lockdown, really focused on cooking my own meals. I was doing a lot of, my motto was keep it simple. So I had a Dutch oven and a cast iron, and I learned how to cook a chuck roast and stew in the Dutch oven in like some braised short rib.
I
And
would like to point out that chuck roast is the cheapest beef, by and large, the cheapest beef you can buy.
yeah,
So
and
that's
I was trying to keep it under budget, right, and do it in a way that I could sustain. So cooking a meal like a chuck roast for a guy like me, that's going to last me like 3 or 4 meals. So the time investment is worth it because all you have to do is throw it in the Dutch oven, throw it in the oven, and sit back for 6 hours. Go to work, and come back and take it out, and you're good. And so I found a lot of success with the Dutch oven, cooking in that. And then I was doing some meals like taco salads. Mark Sisson has this big ass salad recipe. I sort of made my own version of that. So I was going all in on the cooking stuff. I was trying to learn like 2 or 3 new recipes a week. And that to me was my saving grace because it made it fun. And
yeah.
once it was fun, it was part of the lifestyle. And I was rolling like a week. So the way I set it up was like I gave myself a week of doing the keto diet hard, and then I gave myself a meal to kind of pull back and give myself a little bit of a treat. But it wasn't like a cheat day where I went and bought like a full pizza and ate it. It was like I went and got an acai bowl, and
Uh,
then I
a
I
what?
tried to do 2 weeks straight, so just double my consistency and output from the previous week, and at that point the wheels were rolling. Like it was going to last. So that's really how I found my success with it, was making it fun through cooking and giving myself a little bit of a runway to like enjoy it and make it fun. I think that made all the difference.
And when you kind of first decided to make a change, was keto the first thing you came across, the first thing you tried, or had you tried other things before that?
I think for a long period of time, I hadn't really been trying anything specifically. So, like I said, I'd done paleo in college, but you know, keto was the first thing I tried when March struck and COVID hit, and to my luck, it was a huge success. So, I think I was very happy with what I was seeing in the first week that I did it, and then after 3 weeks, I was feeling all the benefits of being in ketosis. And at that point, to me, it was more of a matter of figuring out how to make it a long-term sustainable lifestyle. I saw the benefits, saw what it can really do for me, and then just making it so I can balance it out and create this long-term lifestyle. So I think that keto, I just came across it because I've been following the space. Mark Sisson is someone who I've always kind of followed, and Paul Saladino. So kind of somewhere in between those two is really what inspired me to get going. And it was, off to the races once I had a little bit of success with it.
Tell us a little bit about how, and I realize there may be no answer to this question. How did your changed lifestyle affect the people you hung with? I'm sure it affected who you hung with, but how did it affect them?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's one that actually sits with me. So I think like right now, I'm very much aware that the people who are closest to me are going to have a massive impact on the lifestyle that I'm having. Right. So Brett Salazzo, who's my best friend, and another one of my buddies down here in Austin, they eat and do pretty much the same life. They have the same lifestyle as I do. So it makes things way easier. Initially, that wasn't the case. So initially, the people I was surrounding myself with were, going out to the bars 2 nights a week and having the late night foods 2 nights a week, not getting enough sleep. And I was totally partaking in a decent amount of that. And I think that when I made the change, I was kind of isolating myself. And I had one buddy in Boston who was trying to go through a similar journey for himself. And so he and I were really leaning into each other. And I think that at that moment, that's really all either of us needed. But I do think that, the people who you surround yourself with are playing a bigger role than you realize. And that
so do you think, did isolating yourself help? Did that help you to make that change, do you think?
I think absolutely. And in a short period of time, it's probably that's probably healthy, but it's unsustainable, right? Like you want to be
obviously
socializing and being out with people, but I've built up the willpower at this point to say no to X, Y, and Z meal, or like, if I go out to dinner, it's not even a question at this point because the willpower has been built up, or I just feel comfortable at this point where I know if I have one small treat, it's not going to throw me off the rails. So, I feel, confident in the way that my lifestyle is being lived and portrayed. And like, I know that I can get back on, like, it's a part of my DNA at this point. It's not just some diet that I'm doing. So I think that's where you need to get to when you start integrating yourself. Like if you do sort of really take the time to, and if you have the luxury of taking the time to go really work on, getting your nutrition and diet in order and surrounding yourself with the right people, I think that, when you do start going back and socializing with the people who really haven't bought into what you're doing, I think that it becomes easier just to say no. And also the proof is kind of in the pudding. Like I feel better than I bet 99% of the people I used to hang out with. That, so in that sense, just the feeling of knowing that, like, I feel great. Like I don't want to mess that up, is strong enough to keep me with my convictions of, eating right and in the lifestyle that I'm living.
So I want to just kind of get a summary here because there's going to be people listening to this, and it won't resonate with some of them, but some of them, they'll hear what you have to say and they'll go, yeah, I think I can do this. So the elements of change that I hear for you were the environmental stuff. Were you working from home at that point? You were forced to work from home. Just
working from home.
So you separated yourself from people who didn't support the change that you made, and then you somehow learned how to enjoy the process of making your own food, which I think that's an unappreciated skill. I was cooking last night and I was just kind of noticing how much I've changed, that I enjoy being in the kitchen. I didn't used to be that way. So that's the second thing: isolation from the non-supporters, gaining a new enjoyment in cooking, and you kept it simple. Talk a little bit more about what simple means versus not simple.
Yeah.
What did you have to do to think about simple?
And I want to make a distinction on that first point too, before I jump into that question. But, I think with who you're surrounding yourself with, I think it's a matter of like me taking accountability of my own willpower, right? Like I didn't have the willpower at the time to say no to the social pressures of all those different components. So I think it's a matter of building yourself up to a certain point where saying no in those situations is easy. So that's why I think like it's not necessarily a negative projection on the people that you're surrounding yourself with. Like they could be doing all the right things, in isolation on their own. And when they're hanging out with me, like I'm I don't think that it's necessarily, it's necessarily this thing that, it's their problem. It's definitely an ownership of, hey, you need to have the willpower to say no when people are presenting you with, different opportunities to go socialize or go eat a bad meal. So I think it's more of like a take full accountability of how you're socializing and living your life, because those opportunities are going to be presented from 5 different people. And if you accept all 5, then you've chosen, to be unhealthy five out of 5 times. So, I think that's an important distinction to make, because it is really a matter of building up that willpower to say no when you need to. Um, and it's an empowering feeling. I think that when you do start feeling better and start getting in the zone, so to speak, you feel comfortable making good decisions for yourself. And people who
So
care aren't going to matter.
what did keeping it simple? How did that? What did keep it simple look like for you? Yeah, just kind
Yeah.
of expand on that.
Yeah, I think the keep it simple thing was sort of transcending in a few different in a few different areas of health. So the way I was cooking was very simple. Like, I think I would cook things that were 5 ingredients or less. So whether or not it was the chuck roast or the stew or like a taco salad or anything, it was all just incredibly simplified recipes. And also the way I was exercising, I had one workout routine that I would do 2 or 3 times a week, and then walking was the other supplementation to that. And I think that, though, just that philosophy of simplicity and making the lowest make it the lowest barrier to entry possible. So when I was kind of being in the situation that I was in, working from home and not having to move around and everything was shut down, makes living that way very easy. Like, the amount of energy that I could put into living simply, and there wasn't people asking me to hang out on Friday and Saturday, so I could really focus in on that. So I think that it was really a matter of letting that philosophy take hold early on, and then once you master that simple mindset, then you take it to level 2 and 3 and 4, and lean in where you can lean in to really get the results you want to get. Like, if your goal is to be the most ripped up and shredded person on the planet, like, you're gonna start small to begin with and get further down the path of growing that willpower and the strength to do everything you want to do. But it's not going to happen overnight. You need to learn how to get the little things done. One of my favorite coaches is John Wooden, and he's all about the little things: tie your shoes the right way, put your jersey on the right way. And so for me, that's like the same philosophy in eating. Like, don't make it overcomplicated. You don't need to do all these crazy diets and have all these crazy recipes. If you can find a recipe that is simple, and this is why I think the carnivore diet for many is a great solution, is you can eat a steak and that is the substance of your diet, that it's basically all you need. And I think that works for a lot of people. And I think that simplicity mindset really allows you to spend your willpower outside of nutrition and health. And
Ooh, that's a good point.
it gives you you only have so much of that to give out, right? You only have so much willpower to give out. And so when you make that the most efficient and effective through a simple diet, I think that's really kind of the key. And then it
You
becomes
know,
fun and easy.
that triggers a thought. If you're surrounded with people whose values aren't your own, you're expending willpower in order to continue to live out your own values. If you're surrounded in an environment that kind of forces you into a mold that isn't consistent with who you want to be, you're expending willpower to continue on the trajectory you want to be on. And if that's true in your life, you definitely have less willpower available to you to do those real simple things like not eat crap.
Absolutely.
I you know I I guess it's blindingly obvious, but it just never occurred to me that how real it is that if you're in a high stress lifestyle, it makes it more likely that you're going to eat crap because the crap is easy. The crap doesn't take much effort. The crap's just right there. And maybe the first step on getting a hold of your health is not necessarily the food, but the environment itself. Take some stress out of the environment. If the only thing you can control is food, by all means, do something about the food, but recognize all the places in your life that you're exerting your finite amount of willpower just to survive. It really resonates with me because of some of my history. So I want to articulate that. I want to say that out loud so that people can find something to hold on to. Maybe your lifestyle is just too bloody demanding to to make a big change in diet. Find someplace you can exert that will, or you can change your environment so that you've got the willpower to do the diet. Or maybe the diet's the first place. I don't know. I haven't had to fight that particular battle, but I think that's noteworthy. That's a really noteworthy thing. We've got finite willpower.
Yeah, and it is interesting, how often I see this, with my patients and hearing Harrison's story and a lot of other people's story that, when they do make the change as to what they're eating, uh, that sort of makes the stress go away. A lot of this stress that we all, that a lot of people feel in their daily lives comes from being unhealthy and eating unhealthy foods, and the effects that has on our mental health and everything else involved.
Mm.
And I mean, I can certainly say that since I've gotten healthy, my life objectively from the outside hasn't gotten less stressful. It's gotten more stressful. I've launched, the my own separate practice while continuing to work as a heart surgeon, and all the other things that I have going on in my life. It's certainly not less stressful. I just feel less stressed, as I go through my day, and
Oh,
and
that's good.
and a lot of people, relay the same to me, and I would be interested to hear Harrison's perspective on this, because again, what I see is, you changed what you were eating, you got yourself healthy, and then, you found your life leading down a completely different pathway. And I would say that those two are very closely related, besides the obvious fact that you're now building your life around nutrition, which is what allowed you to get healthy.
Yeah. I mean, my feeling is that the positive effects of eating healthy have that compounding effect where it does feed back into everything you're doing. Like you said, the stress that, it's a circular feedback loop, basically. Like if you're eating poorly, you're going to be more stressed, and then that just continues to
If you're more
compound either.
stressed, you're going to eat more poorly. Excellent.
And
Yeah.
directionally, it's either working backwards for you or forwards. Like it's either compounding negatively and you're feeling the stress, or you're eating well and you're feeling what Dr. Phil is feeling, which you're getting in the best shape of your life, and you're able to take on more stress because it's the other stress is out of your life. You're able to go after the things that you want to go after. That's sort of how I felt, was pretty empowered by the way the nutrition and health aspects of my life changes, the effects that they were having on my life. I was ready to make a change. I was ready to move out of a job that I felt like was causing me to sort of go down, living a life that I wasn't fully aligned with. Like there were certain parts that I loved, worked with a great team, but it wasn't like my mission. And I think that having played sports in college, I'm a completely mission focused person. And so I want to be able to attach myself to something and really like make an impact. And so for me, I felt like I was running into resistance with my job and sort of my interest. And then I just kind of had the time to think to myself, like, hey, what do you really give a crap about? What do you want to do? And I think that all of this has sort of empowered me and gave me the conviction to, get myself healthy and then get myself doing what I want to do, which is ultimately working and promoting the regenerative agriculture lifestyle and how that feeds into the food system and the health system. And I think that there's a lot of people who are going to hear about the regenerative agriculture component to playing into nutrition and playing into people, really getting a hold of their health again. Because so many people have the opportunity to get back to a place where they've never been before, like, reclaiming their
Oh, yeah.
health. And, I think you can really like reset the clock on your life by taking a hold of things. And it isn't just something that's isolated in a vacuum. Like, you didn't just lose 20 pounds, you lost 20 pounds and now you're able to go do all the cool things that you wish you could have done, or you lost 20 pounds and now you're able to have the energy to get out of bed and do an extra hour of work that you're actually excited about doing. Like, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. And I think that there's a total connection there with, taking control of your health and doing more fun and exciting things with your life. I think it's just this empowering feeling, and it gives you, once you sort of realize that you can be uh, take control of that aspect of your life, you know that you can do it in a lot of different ways. And
Right.
not to mention, like, all this kind of aligned pretty well. Like, I was working on got in great shape, and then, fast forward a year, I'm training for an Ironman with one of my best friends. And so it's like I was reaching for more and getting more out of it, and all of it has definitely played into the fact, like, what I'm doing now, it's all built upon each other. But
Well,
I
let's
think
talk.
ground zero really feels like that period where, when COVID struck, I took the opportunity to take the time and really like focus on my health.
Well, let's hear about the present now. The Meat Mafia. First of all, as a professional marketer, I I commend you. Great name, very memorable. Give us the details. What the
I
heck's the Meat
appreciate it.
Mafia all about? I dig it. I want to know more.
Yeah, the real story here, or the story here, is pretty funny, and it grew organically. So I started writing for Slim in December, and I'm trying to figure out how to do this, right? So I'm trying to get into regenerative agriculture and learn more, and also figure out, who's doing what in the space, what are the issues, how to make this thing grow. I'd heard some amazing stories about farmers like Gabe Brown, who wrote this book, Dirt to Soil, which talks about how he flipped his farm from using a bunch of chemicals to no chemicals at all through regenerative agriculture. And now his farm is more profitable, and he's producing and educating around the world about, how to get rid of these chemicals and raise really, really healthy animals without having to, go through all these conventional processes that are taught in all of our schools on how to farm. And so, I was just interested in learning more about that. So I decided to figure out how to, start writing on these topics and see if there was anyone out there already doing it. And Slim was doing it, and he was looking for people to come write for him. And so I reached out to Slim, and he was, I had a piece that I was ready to publish, and he was excited about it, and he published it, and we went from there. It was just, the first article went well, and he and I started talking. He's like, this has got some traction, really well written, like, interested in what your vision is. And I'm sitting there like, vision, whoa, I just wanted to write one article and figure out like what the next steps were. And so it's been a constant iteration from that point forward of like, what are we going to do here? And I think that the key is that I think so I wrote 5 articles uh, 5 articles for Slim, and we've been working together and collaborating on this idea around food intelligence and really growing this idea around nutrition, which, the first month I was doing this alone, doing these longer form writing pieces for Slim Substack. And at the same time, Salazzo and I are living together. So Clemenza and Salazzo run this Ironman, and then we're living together. I'm writing for Slim, and we, I think about this story a lot. So we were living in an Airbnb, and we moved into my apartment in Austin, and he's hanging out, like sleeping on an air mattress on my floor. And I'm creating this anonymous account to start writing for Slim. And, trying to figure out what name I'm going to do. And I come up with this mafia idea. And so come up with a mafia character, and he's laughing at me the whole time, like thinking it's so funny. And he comes up with a counter character, and we just organically started running with this idea of, the big food system has failed so many people without them even realizing it. And there needs to be some organic movement that comes up and starts, like, not laying down the law, but like saying, like, this is garbage. Like, why are we listening to the people who have led you astray to begin with? And I think that, we're not trying to take an aggressive tone, but we're trying to say, like, people need to really be empowered by what they can do for themselves and how they can make changes in their lives by educating themselves. And I think that that's kind of the root of our story, right? It was like, I was interested in getting into regenerative agriculture, so I started writing about it. And then that led into other things that we could, bond together with our nutrition background and our health background. And I think the vein that we're trying to play in is this whole idea of health. It's really a modern phenomenon. Like, beforehand, when we were just eating what was grown in our backyard that wasn't highly processed, there weren't all these chronic issues. So now we're like having to be conscious about what we're putting in our body and the choices that we make every day, more, or at least more so conscious. And I think that sort of leads into our story where we're in a place where we have some different experiences that we've had in our lives, where we're ex-athletes, we're focused on nutrition and honestly, like, a lot of the endurance sports stuff was a big part of our background, but we've played a number of different sports. So really just living healthy lifestyles. And so that's where we're trying to make the most difference now, is be practitioners who can stand alongside great doctors like Dr. Phil, and be people who just embody what this whole movement is about. And we don't necessarily need, Harvard degrees to be voices in the space. Like, we're extremely healthy individuals, and we want to help other people get to their own definition of health so that they can live the life that they want to live. And I think a lot of that is just unlocking the knowledge banks that they can then go and learn for themselves and equip themselves with what they need to take their life to where they want it to go. So, our story is still being written, for sure. We're the Meat Mafia, and I think we're just getting started here. So we've had a lot of success with, recently transitioning into writing these longer form threads, talking a lot about what the food system historically has looked like. So Salazzo has written a few killer pieces on Rockefeller's role in the food system, Kellogg's role in the food system. I wrote one that was based on a great book called The Dorito Effect, talking about how our taste buds have been manipulated by big food. And we've done, plenty of other ones, but we've been leaning into that form of content because it gets to a greater audience, and the content itself is extremely engaging. I think there's a ton there. And if it's not it's not necessarily going to give you everything you need. It's not the 100% like here's all the tools, but it reduces it down enough. So if you're interested enough, you then can take the next step and sort of get on board with what we're talking about, get in touch with the Dr. Phils who are credentialed and going to be able to take you that extra mile. So, we sort of think of ourselves as like the gateway into this sort of lifestyle and movement, and sort of shepherd people along to the people who have the expertise like Dr. Phil, and then let him take it from there.
Well, how do folks, I've just flipped over here to Twitter and searched for Meat Mafia. I got to tell you, there's a lot of folks involved in the Meat Mafia here. So how do folks follow you or find out more about the Meat Mafia? And I'm guessing you're not the Meat Free Mafia, which is a Twitter handle. I'm going to have to go check that one out just so I can troll them a little bit.
So my account is Carney Clemenza. And
Carney Clemenza.
Carney Clemenza. I go by Clemenza. And then my counterpart is Salazzo, and his account is Mr. Salazzo. So there's not one account. We sort of play off each other.
Okay.
And, are both posting separately and, working under the Meat Mafia brand and umbrella.
All right. We'll make sure that gets posted in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Well, any final words for us, Phil? Want to wrap this up? We've been going about an hour, so I want to make sure we cover anything that is remaining uncovered.
Yeah, I hope people really enjoyed that conversation, and I think it will resonate with a lot of people. And it just, again, this is something that, as I talk about, everyone needs to be doing for themselves, and you really need to be taking agency over your life and over the food that you're eating, and taking control of the food that you're eating. And it's, I think, Harrison is just one of those, another, great force in this movement, and a great example of, what this is about and what it can be. And as he said, it's really just getting started. So excited to continue to see where this all leads, and to keep having these conversations with all of the interesting people that we're coming across in this movement.
I agree. Well, good luck there in South Austin, Harrison. We talked about this online, and I'm still giggling about the fact that you moved from South Boston to South Austin, not merely because it rhymes, but because, for those who know, the cultural differences are profound.
Oh, yeah.
Well, for Dr. Philip Ovadia, I'm Jack Heald. I want to remind you all to subscribe to this podcast. We drop a new one every Tuesday about midnight. No, I guess that's Monday at midnight. Tuesday mornings at 12 a.m. You can follow Dr. Philip Ovadia on Twitter at iFixHearts, and his website is ovadiahearthealth.com. Also, Google the Meat Mafia for Salazzo and Clemenza. I think you're going to get a kick out of that. And we'll talk to you guys next week.